All right, Shalom. Shalom. Barakatha Yahweh. Barakatha Yahweh Shai. Barakatha Yahweh. Barakatha Yahweh Shai. Barakatha Yahweh. Barakatha Yahweh Shai. Call Halayimla Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. Bahasham Rakaha Kodash. And double honors to the beloved apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who were well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David, beginning with the 144,000 and the rest of the men, women, and children out of the 12 tribes, whom Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai will ultimately have mercy upon. And Salakia, I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit, but Lord's will, you can hear me clearly. And the title of this lesson this evening is going to be IUIC pays visit to Melbourne, Australia, preaching to Hamites and Aborigines. All right. And as you can see here in the screen, you have just recently, they now have what's called IUIC Australia. And the title of this video, as posted of the 21st of April, year 2025, Christianity brought destruction to the Aboriginals of Australia. And then they hashtagged Neftali, IUIC, Nathaniel 7, and then Oceania. Now, just understand, I done a video about a month ago. All right. And this is on my page. And if you go to the search bar here on my page, and you can only do it via way of the web browser, this will not work if you're doing it on your cell phone, if you're using the YouTube app. So you have to do it on the web browser. However, I've done a video about a month ago entitled IUIC adds to the 12 tribe sign. All right. And when we come back over here, they are now stating that the Aborigines of Australia, which is also known as the indigenous Australians, along with the Torres Strait Islanders, are part of the tribe of Naphtali. All right. Which I've already done a lesson on. But I haven't touched on proving that the Aborigines of Australia are indeed the seed of Japhet and they are not Israelites. All right. So I got this video played in at 1 minute and 32 seconds. But before we go into this video dealing with what they have tried to do, okay, and failed miserably, we're going to touch on dealing with the Aboriginals of Australia right now. You have something that's called, when you go into the scriptures, and we go to Genesis, the 10th chapter, real quick. All right. And let's come up here, and we're going to go to verse 5. And as you read from verse 2, where it touches on the sons of Japhet, right? You have Gomar, Magog, Madai, Javan or Yawan, and Tubal and Meshach and Tiras. And the sons of Gomar, Ashkenaz, and Riphath and Togarmah. It says, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. And by these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, meaning his language, after their families in their nations. Now, the key word here is the word isles, all right, which is ayah. All right, Salakia passed it. All right, you have the Hebrew word ayah, ayah, all right, but they pronounce in the Yiddish e, but it's actually pronounced ayah in Allah Shwan Kodash. And when you drop down, it typically says coast, island, shore, or region. Okay. Now, when you drop down to the let's come down here to the Jacenius Hebrew Chaldee Lexicon. You go to the full entry. It's speaking of maritime land, okay, seacoast or island, which is to be understood as the Indian archipelago. So all of the seed of Japhet, all right, were given the coastal parts of regions and the islands, all right. And the scholars understood this to be what is called today the Indian archipelago. Now, when you look up the Indian archipelago, all right, another name for it is the Malay archipelago. All right. Now, when you look up Malay archipelago, as we have here, all right, it says the Malay archipelago is the archipelago between mainland Southeast Asia and Australia. All right. And is also called, all right, India or Indo-Australian archipelago. Okay. Now, it goes on to say the name was taken from the 19th century European concept of a Malay race and later based on the distribution of Austronesian languages. All right. So anybody who falls under this term, Austronesian languages, which I've covered in the previous video of IUIC adding to the 12 tribes chart, they will fall under the Malay archipelago, which is also known as Indian archipelago. All right. Now, here's a little something that I ended up picking up. It says the Indo-Australian archipelago, also known as Malaysia or the Malay archipelago, so it's synonymous with one another, is a vast complex region in Southeast Asia comprising over 20,000 islands. And what's significant with the Indo-Australian archipelago is that it consists of Malaysia, the Philippines, New Guinea, and other islands, right? Now, when you drop down, what is the Indo-Australian archipelago? It says the combined region formed by the Malay Peninsula, Northern Australia, and the numerous islands of Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia. All right. Now, I also went and looked up Austronesian languages, right? Now, what it'll tell you is when you look this up, let me see here. I don't think they have it. Yeah, they don't really have it. But what it'll tell you is that the Austronesian languages are those surrounded by maritime Southeast Asia, all right, mainland Southeast Asia, Madagascar, the islands of the Pacific Ocean, and Taiwan. But it also says here in the second paragraph, in 1706, the Dutch scholar Adrian Rillen first observed similarities between the languages spoken in the Malay archipelago and by peoples on the islands in the Pacific Ocean, which proves that your so-called Polynesians today, all right, which consist of Tongans, Fijians, New Zealanders, all right, Modis, all right, things of that nature, or people of that ethnicity group, they all fall under the Malay archipelago, as well as Aborigine Australians, right? Now, when you go to, as I have here, Austronesian peoples, okay, this is from Wikipedia, and it says here in the highlighted part, all right, if you can see that, it says the British naturalist James Cowles Pritchard originally followed Blumenbach by treating Papuans and indigenous Australians as being descendants of the same stock as Austronesians. You see that? Now remember, if we come back, all right, Austronesians, okay, there are a large family widely spoken throughout the maritime Southeast Asia, which when you look up maritime Southeast Asia, it consists all of the, let me see if they actually have a map here. Right. If you see where my little cursor is, this area is considered, this will be considered Melanesia. All right. That's why it's known as Austronesia, which is consisted of being in the Australia archipelago. Okay. And when you go to it's also known as Australo-Melanesian. All right. It says Australo-Melanesian is an outdated historical grouping of various people indigenous to Melanesia in Australia. Controversially, some groups found in parts of Southeast Asia and South Asia were also sometimes included. While most authors included Papuans, Aboriginal Australians, and Melanesians, all right, there was controversy about the inclusion of the various Southeast Asian populations grouped as Negrito, or a number of dark-skinned tribal populations of Indian subcontinent. All right, and this also proves that all of these other heathen nations were of dark skin color, with the exception of the Edomites, which is today your so-called white tea man. Okay, now uh, something else also I ended up looking up. I typed in Indigenous Australians connection with the Taiwanese Indigenous. It says, are Aboriginal Australians related to Polynesians? The answer to that is no. However, it says Indigenous Australians are most closely related to the peoples of Melanesia, such as Papuans, with only remote ancestry in common with Polynesians. All right. They're what they will tell you if you really did, because it's hard to find, is that they come from different tribes, but the Aborigine Australians and the Polynesians today, they both come of the seed of Japhet. All right. And that's a fact. Now, here's something you have to pay attention to, because I also looked this up and I asked, is Papua New Guinea part of Malay archipelago? It says no. Papua New Guinea is generally not considered part of the Malay archipelago. It says while the island of New Guinea, which Papua New Guinea occupies the eastern half of, is geographically close to the Malay archipelago, it is located to the east of it, and it is part of a larger region known as the Indo-Australian archipelago, or Melanesia. But we just looked up. Okay, let me see here. When you go to it, where is it? Let me see. And Salakia, if I can try to find it. Bear with me really quickly. Just give me 1 second if I can find it. Okay, Salakia. So when you look up, let's come back over here, and I ended up finding it. But when you go back to the Malay archipelago, it says here, it says situated between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, the archipelago of over 25,000 islands and islets is the largest archipelago by area and fifth by the number of islands in the world. It includes Brunei, East Timor, Indonesia, Malaysia, specifically East Malaysia, and Papua New Guinea in the Philippines. The term is largely synonymous with maritime Southeast Asia. So, on in one aspect, they're telling you that, as we read here, they said that Papua New Guinea is not generally considered part of the Malay archipelago. But when you come back here, when it talks about ethnic groups out of the Austronesian people, which goes back to Malay archipelago, it says Papuans. You see that? So, one, this is why you have to, study to show thyself approved. You can't just take, AI is telling you here on one end that it's not, but when you go into the research, they are a part of that. And so, as a result, what I'm essentially saying is this: the Aboriginal Australians, they fall under the Austronesian people. Okay. Let me see here. Let's go back to I had it earlier, if I can find it. If not, that's okay. What's this here? Let me see. I had it earlier and lost it. And Salakia, let me just try to find my place. Let's see, where did I originally have this information? If I can't find it, it's all good, But nevertheless, let me see. Let me do this here. Here we go, right here. Found it. So once again, the British naturalist James Callis Pritchard originally followed Blumenbach by treating Papuans and indigenous Australians as being descendants of the same stock as Austronesians. Now, remember, when you come back here, the term Malay archipelago, which is the same as Indian archipelago, was derived from the European concept of a Malay race, a culturally similar non-oceanic subset of the Austronesian peoples. The Australian Aborigines fall under Austronesian peoples, which makes them what? When you come back to the scriptures, Indian archipelago, that goes back to the seed of Japhet, because they were given the Isles. They're known as the Isles of the Gentiles. All right. So, I pray that you can see that connection. All right. Those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. Now, coming back here to the video, I'm going to play this clip and I'm going to show you, all right, how they pretty much came here to Melbourne and basically tried to, for lack of better terms, try to win over a Hamite woman, right? So without further ado, this is fair use. This is fair use. Chosen people out the Bible. Hey, brothers. Now, one quick point I want to make. Where he's preaching at, which you have to have an actual permit, is there's a place here in Melbourne called Footscray. And for those of you who don't know, on a demographic point of view, all right, Footscray is known to a lot of Sudanese people, you have a lot of Ethiopians, all right, which is the main religion there is Islam. Okay, the main religion in Footscray is Islam, and I've been to Footscray many a times. All right, matter of fact, a lot of Americans, when they come out here, they actually go to Footscray because that's normally where all the barbers are to cut so-called black people's hair. All right. So when they got the AOK to come to Melbourne, off top, and I know this off top because I've been in this country for 20 years now. They would have asked what area is where all the so-called black people, which also, by the way, shows you how carnal IUIC are. They're not spiritual. They're not a spiritual organization whatsoever. And it ultimately goes back to their leadership. And you're gonna see what I mean when I say that they are carnal, because all skin folk is not kinfolk. Now, once again, this area that they're preaching in, this is full of all Hamitic and a couple of Japhetic Aborigines. All right, so let's listen in. Over there, hey, come here, your hands. Read again. Cursed shall thou be. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Now let me ask you this: have you ever heard of what is it called? Blackbird? Never heard of that before? Okay, when the Australians came over here, they came over here and conquered our people and forced them into labor and as far as the slaves, right? Now he said when the Europeans came over to Australia, they conquered our people. Well, wait a minute. When you understand the scriptures, our people didn't go to the continent of Australia. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but after 66 and 70 AD, there was a split. You had some that ended up staying back that went into the slave trade of the Romans. And then the ones that broke free when Yahushua told them in Luke, the 21st chapter, which let's go there real quick. All right. Because the black birding wasn't dealing with Jake. It was dealing with your Japhetic nations, such as your so-called Polynesians and them today. But Yahushua said this. Okay. Let's drop down straight to the point. We'll start at verse 20. This is Luke 21 and 20. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, speaking of the ancient Roman Empire under Titus and Vespasian, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. So what they ended up doing is, when you understand the history, some of them left, they went up to north parts of Africa, some of them went up into Europe, but then the rest of them, they went down into the continent of Africa, and they went out west. All right. And the proof of that, what I'm saying, okay, because when they were gathered during the transatlantic slave trade, when you look up the transatlantic slave trade map, let's go to images right quick. The bulk of the, let's see here. I want to get a really good one. This will do. Let me see. Let's click on that one. Let's see where this takes us. All right. So hopefully you brothers and sisters can see this. So now, if we have a good look at this, all right, a lot of them wasn't taken. All right, as you can see, this is where they were taken. Right, throughout the transatlantic slave trade, they was brought from over here. Well, you know what? Let me do this. Hold on. Let's back up a moment. Let's come back over here. You know what? Let's do this. I'll get something even better than that. Let's see what we can find. All right. Let's see what this one is, because it was called the triangular slave trade. This one might do. Let's see what this one is about. All right, so slave routes. All right, Bambara, Ashanti, Benin, which is where close to where it's called the door of no return. Yoruba. These are all these places where all Israelites dwelt. Okay, those places right there is where all Israelites dwelt. All right, also known as the slave coast. So when you come down, well, look at that. When you come down, you had Ouida, which is when you go into it, French for Judah. All right. Then you had the slave coast. Okay. Then you had Timbuktu. See, all Israel. Okay. The bulk of the 12 tribes, or not the 12 tribes, Salakia. Let me correct myself. The bulk of the southern kingdom, because the northern kingdom was already over in the Americas. The bulk of the southern kingdom, they were out west. Okay. Hence why it's called slave coast, because when Esau came over, he knew that we were Israelites. Okay. And then you have some of our people, they was taken all through, okay, all down here over to the South Americas. All right. Ended up over in the islands. Okay. Then they went over here, Canary Islands. They went up Europe. That's why you got a lot of Jake over in London. Okay. Venice. All right. You got Jake in Istanbul. All right. You got Israelites in Turkey, Israelites in Rome, Israelites in Venice. All right. So forth and so on. Okay. So what he's talking about, when you talk about the history, all right, of black birding, okay. Now that's not to say you would not have had Jakes in there. Yeah. Because when you had even Captain Cook, who came over here, all right, and I got to fact check it, but it's possible that he would have had some Jakes to come over and help. All right, when he came over to take over Japhet's land, just like he did over in Europe, dealing with the Etruscans. When you look that information up, when Esau took over the Etruscans in the Minoans land, all right, the true Greeks and the true Romans of that land. But these, when you deal with the black birding, okay, it says here, When you read at the top, it says for more than 40 years, Sugar Barons practiced blackbirding, removing thousands of South Sea Islanders from their homes. See, these South Sea Islanders, they're from the seed of Japhet. They're not Israelites. But see what IUIC is trying to do, okay? They're trying to go back and say that, all skin folk is kinfolk, and that's not the truth. All skin folk is not kinfolk. Because, yeah, when you go into the history of Japhet, yes, some of the sons of Japhet were enslaved. You see? So, but that doesn't mean that they're Israelites. All right.
For plantation, picking cotton, picking tobacco, picking sugar, all these things based upon us, and we was cursed in the field. God said these things must happen to us because of our disobedience. I'm going to tell you one of the things that we're disobedient today. Hebrews 13:4. Hebrews 13:4. Hebrews 13:4.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 4. Read. Marriage is honorable.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you see marriage continually going on in our communities today? Not really. Hey, we like to go to the club, work that twerk there, right? We like going to the club. Well, I'm gonna say, I used to like to go to the club, work that twerk there. When I was in the world, before I repented, right? Before I converted my mind, I used to love going to the club. And a lot of so-called blacks like to go to the club today, right? But God says what? Read that again.
Marriage is honorable in all.
Marriage is honorable in all. God says, what you saying that was again? Natasha, are you married to Natasha? Why you say it like that, sis? She's like, hell no. Right. Why you say it like that?
Because I got things to do before that.
But you remember what God said, though, right? Because remember, we was a cursed people for disobeying God.
Now, one thing I've noticed about IUIC, when it comes to a lot of women, especially a lot of Jake women, and look, judging through the spirit, she could be a Jake, but then again, like I said, this area, which is in Footscray, this is a heavy populated area of Hamites. All right, there's not a lot of Jakes over here, and when you do get a lot of so-called Black Americans that come down and visit, they can't stand us. They will look at you a certain way. All right, and you want to see a Hamite that's going to come up in the midst of IUIC trying to have a conversation with this individual, you're gonna see what I'm talking about, because you're gonna have a Hamite that's gonna come up, he's gonna be looking at them weird, right? But see, what I've noticed, just to get back to the point, is this is how they get a lot of women into their congregation. This is what I would like to call IUIC sell pitch towards women. Now he's using the marriage. He's going down to marriage. Now watch what he says.
So now we're going to one of the laws God says we must keep if we want to get out of the Lord's state today. Do you want to see if people stop getting high?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you want to see if people stop getting drunk?
Absolutely.
Here's one of the things we got to apply. Read it again.
Marriage is honorable in all.
God says marriage is honorable in all. Tasha, you supposed to get that. It's your ordained, it's your job, it's your godly duty to find you a husband, sister.
Now he just told this woman that it's her godly duty to get married. Now, it's a beautiful thing. Yes. All right. We've been put on this earth to be fruitful and multiply. But what did Apostle Paul say? Because now you may have a Jake woman who watches this for the first time. And then, her being, as the scriptures, speaks about silly women laid captive with sins. Right. But when you deal with, let's go 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter. See, this is why they don't like Paul's epistles, man, because Apostle Paul cuts what they teach. We're going to go straight to the 25th verse. And I'm going to read it in the AMP. See what that says real quick, if I can get it. That is. Type in P. All right, let's see. 1 Corinthians 7th chapter and the 25th verse in the AMP. It says, now concerning the virgins of marriageable age, meaning women who are of age that can marry, I have no command of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, but I give my opinion as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. So, because you'll have a lot of guys that'll say, there's been certain times where, Apostle Paul will say things and it's not even thus saith the Lord. Yeah, well, guess what? Even though he was using wisdom, the wisdom still comes from Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. So although it's his words, he's basing upon his judgment based upon the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding from on high, which goes back to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. How about that? So he's speaking and saying, listen, concerning you virgins, you women of marriageable age, I don't have a command of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. So right there, we can establish by saying that there's not a commandment for women right now who may not be married to get married, right? And here's why. If we keep reading down, let's keep reading. Verse 26, I think then that because of the impending distress, that is the pressure of the current trouble, it is good for a man to remain as he is. This is even for men, but this can also be applied for women as well. And you're going to see why in a second. Okay. You're going to see why in a second. That's crazy. Show you how the spirit is. I just seen the brother. Let me see here. Just to show y'all in real time, the brother Yashar, GMS down in Australia, IUIC Australia, you are bugged out and not teaching the right doctrine. That's right. All right. That just came 2 minutes ago. So show you how the spirit worked. And I didn't even know that brother was going to do a video on it, even though we spoke on the subject. Because to correct myself and to give you guys the breakdown, brother Yashar is the one that sent me this video right here. Okay, he's the one that peeped this information and sent it to me and gave me the green light to pretty much speak on it and show you how the spirit do. Okay, we both speaking on the same topic, man. All right, call Halayim Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. And so, nevertheless, to get back to the point, so Paul is saying, look, dealing with the current troubles that we're in today, all right, because you got to understand, Paul is not only speaking to the Israelites back then, but remember, these epistles are written to us for today's time. He said, what? It is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? So meaning, are you already married? Don't seek to be released. Yeah, it may be hard and stuff now, but hey, you can't, don't seek to be released, because even Yahweh Shah said, except for the grounds of fornication, which merely is talking about, or which, you know, primarily Salaki is talking about adultery. That's the only time you can break away from her. Okay. It says, are you unmarried? Here's the point. Do not seek a wife. So IUIC, what do you have to say about 1 Corinthians 7:27? Is Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai going to punish this individual if she's a Jake because she didn't get married? When Apostle Paul gave his wisdom and understanding that comes from Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, said, listen, if you're unmarried, don't seek to be married. You can't force the men to marry. Likewise to the women, you can't force the women to marry. Now, it's a beautiful thing if Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai brings that union together between a man and a woman, but it's not a sin if they don't go. All right. And to continue on, what I mean by that is, watch this. Verse 28. But if you do marry, you have not sinned in doing so. And if a virgin marries, dealing with the woman, she has not sinned in doing so. Yet those who marry will have troubles, special challenges in this life. That's why she said, if you read her reaction, all right, let's take it back a little bit. Let's see here. I think I went a little bit too far. Because he asked her, he said, are you married? Let's see here. See what she said? She said, hell no. Right? But see, any real person will know that. Salakia, I didn't even show the screen. Let me take it back a little bit. Salakia for that.
Say like, hell no. Right. Why you say like that?
Her reaction. Take it back a little bit more.
And all marriage is honorable in home. God says, what you say your name was again? Natasha, you married Natasha? Why you say it like that?
Now, it could be, you know, to keep it fair, there's probably multiple reasons why she doesn't want to get married. All right. But nevertheless, the point is this, getting back to the scriptures, 1 Corinthians 7:28. But if you do marry, you have not sinned in doing so. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned in doing so. Yet those who marry will have troubles, special challenges in this life. And I am trying to spare you that. All right. Now, when you drop down to verse 32, it says, but I want to free you from concern. The unmarried man is concerned about the things of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Shai, how he may please the Lord, right? That's what he's concerned about, right? It says, but the married man is concerned about the worldly things, how he may please his wife. And his interests are divided. The unmarried woman or the virgin, or Salakia, the unmarried woman or the virgin is concerned about the matters of the Lord, how to be holy and set apart both in body and in spirit. You see that? But a married woman is concerned about worldly things, how she may please her husband. You see that? So it says, now I say this for your own benefit, not to restrict you, but to promote what is appropriate and secure, undistracted devotion to the Lord, Yahweh Shem Shai. That's why, you know, Paul said, look, I would rather you be like me, because Paul wasn't married. And that gives you, you know, more time and dedication on Yahweh Shem Shai in this ministry. But he said, look, if you do decide to go and get married, go ahead and get married. It ain't a sin, you know. Especially if you're burning, let every man have his own wife, and let every husband have, let every woman have her own husband. Okay. And now that doesn't mean that when it says let every man have his own wife, that's not speaking of you're only supposed to deal with one woman. All right. Just have to throw that out there for somebody try to take a sound bite from this video and say, see, GMS said that. No. All right. A man still can have multiple women if he chooses to. Anyway. So let's come back to this.
I like, hell no. Right. Why you say it like that?
Because I got things to do before that.
But what God said, though, right? Because remember, we was a cursed people for disobeying God.
And see, you know, her answer when she said, I got things to do before all that, that's the status quo within this society. All right. This is why the apostles teaches us that we are not to take things seriously in society, because see, back then, especially in the ancient world, as I'm speaking of, you know, there was no such thing of, go and sow your royal roast, have fun, do this, travel the world, and then settle down, even though you didn't been ran through, but by every Tom, Dick, and Harry. No, you know, women, they were married off at a young age. All right. But that's not ideal within this society. All right. This is why Yahweh Shah said for us to do what? Let's go back to the KJV. All right. I want to get this precept real quick, and then I'll get another one. We'll close out because I didn't want this to be too long. Let me see here. I think I stayed around. Hold on. Yeah, I bet you I spelled treasures wrong. Did I? Nah, we all good. All right, this is Matthew 6:19. It says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doeth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doeth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. All right, and I want to read that in a different translation if I can. All right, let's get it quickly. AMP. It says in the AMP, Matthew 6:19, do not store up for yourselves material treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. All right. It says, for where your treasure is, there your heart, your wishes, your desires that on which your life centers will be also. So that goes into your marriage. Because remember, Yahushua even told the disciples that he that leaveth his father, his mother, his sister, etc., his wife, will have 100-fold. And when you go to Psalms, just to back up what I'm saying, your heart's desire, if it's your heart's desire as a man to have multiple women in the kingdom, that's going to be fulfilled. This is Psalms 37:4. It says, delight yourself in Yahweh, and he will give you the desires and petitions of your heart, meaning your mind. So don't worry about the things of this world, okay? But focus on the kingdom of heaven, because what? This place is fucking polluted, man. Excuse my language. All right? This place is polluted. There ain't nothing here, man. All right? So your focus and your care shouldn't be on, if you can help it, don't worry about getting with anyone, man. All right? Worry about getting right with Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You see? But see, this is what IUIC do. They play on the emotions. They play on, what's hip in society. And they kind of use that to try to lure you in. Like he used the marriage. And then the next topic that he goes into is her wearing pants. You see what I'm saying? Now the scripture says, let's go back to the King James. And let's go to 2 Tim 3. All right. Straight to the point. Because this is IUIC, 2 Timothy 3:5, having a form of godliness out there marching, talking about the law, statutes, commandments, which don't get it twisted. The law, statutes, commandments, yes, it's a beautiful thing. All right. But what about the law of faith? What about faith in Yahushua HaMashiach? Right? It says having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. And they're denying the power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. They don't even call in the names of the Heavenly Father through his son, Yahushai. So right there, that's an example of denying the power. Right? It says, for of this sort are they which creep into houses, because they came out here to Australia and led captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lust, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Let's read in a different translation. You know where I'm going. All right. And Salakia, I have an issue of not sharing the tab. So I'll read it again. Salakia for that. 2 Timothy 3, and I'll start at verse 5. And Salakia, let's get in the MP. It says, holding to a form of outward godliness religion, IUIC, and although, all right, it says, let's see here. All right. It says, verse 5, holding to a form of outward godliness religion, although they have denied its power, for their conduct nullifies their claim of faith. Avoid such people and keep far away from them. Verse 6, for among them are those who worm their way into homes and captivate morally weak and spiritually dwarfed women, weighed down by the burden of their sins, easily swayed by various impulses. And that's exactly what they do. You came way out to Australia, which the internet does a lot of the heavy lifting, man. It's like with IUIC, it's a numbers game. The Heavenly Father said there's going to be, the scriptures speak about a small sanctuary, right? Let's get that. Salakia. I think I spelled it wrong. Hold on. Salakia. I cannot type tonight. Salakia. All right. Small sanctuary. All right. Let's see. That's not it. Let's see if I can find it. Bear with me, Akim. me see. I think the one I'm looking for is in Isaiah, if I'm not mistaken. Bear with me for 1 second. Let me go because I got it saved on my phone. Let me see if I can find it. Because I'm probably wording it wrong. Let me see. Small sanctuary. Ezekiel 11. And I think it's not small. It's a little sanctuary. That's why I'm probably not getting it. Let me go to Ezekiel 11. Where is it? Ezekiel, it is. Ezekiel 11 at 16. It says, therefore, tell the exiles, the Israelites that are scattered, this is what the sovereign Yahweh says. Although I have scattered you in the countries of the world, I will be a sanctuary to you during your time in exile. Now, if we read that in the KJV 16 again, it says, therefore say, thus saith Yahweh, although I have cast them far off from among the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come. All right. That's why you have a lot of Akim, all over the world, they own, little camps and stuff set up, man. Okay. But us here at Great Millstone, you don't see us hopping on planes and going across the definition trying to wake up our people. No, the focal point should be in America, not in Australia. The mass exodus is going to come up. Matter of fact, let's get a Revelation. Okay. Revelation, the 11th chapter, because the scripture says what? Revelation 11 and 8, and their dead bodies shall. Now, the center point, the context is dealing with America, because it says, in their dead bodies, speaking of the Israelites, shall lie in the street of that great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. You see, because the bulk of the 12 tribes, remember, when you go to Micah 4 and 10, the Lord said that what? Be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail, for now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field. You see that? We went into Africa, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, which is America. There shalt thou be delivered. So the greatest exodus is coming out of America, not Australia. Now, if there are some of the elect that are in this country, Australia, which I believe there is, okay, then according to, let's go to real quick, Matthew, the 24th chapter, they're going to be beamed up amongst with the other elect across the four winds. This is Matthew 24 and 30, straight to the point. It says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, right? It also says, and he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall take Salakia, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. So that proves right then and there that you're going to have elect gather from all parts of the world. Okay. But the bulk of the remnant will be rescued from America. Why? Because America is going to be destroyed. But like I said here in this verse, you're going to have a remnant and an elect of the nation of Israel that's also going to be beamed up from other parts of the world. And that includes Australia. All right. Because our people are scattered everywhere, man. Okay. So that's not to say that there's no elect here in this country. Sure, there is. But look, that's the point. I don't want to go too further. I've already went over my expected time. The point has been made, and this just goes to show you, all right, because like I said, after they speak about the whole marriage, he gets on her about wearing pants. But look, you're not even wearing, you're breaking the law. You freshly lined up. And then on top of that, you have on an undergarment. You see? And the scripture says your garment should be loose all the way down to the foot. You know, but that's another topic for a different time. You know, I'm gonna end it right here. And I want to give all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha Kodash, and double honors to the beloved apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who we will. Peace and salutation unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David. And you know, pretty much I just wanted to, you know, this is just, I mean, what more can we say? All right. But I just wanted to touch on, you know, what the brother Yashar sent me. And yeah, IUIC is now down in the land down under. All right. So I'm gonna end it there, Akim, and it's on to the next, Lord's will. Shalom.